If you're just getting in here, I apologize. Apparently, as we started, our internet connection went kaflooey, and as happens from time to time, I didn't realize. My daughter just came on and said, "Not sure you can see this, but you're frozen." I can see it now, Robin. So let me start all over again. For those who are joining in and who will come in later on and who will watch it on the replay, my guest tonight is Kimmy Levi. And without realizing we weren't on the stream, we've been reminiscing on old times and how long I've known his family and his grandfather and his mother and father and all of the children and Abijah and stuff. Robin is in here. I think maybe she quit on us, but you're in Tulsa. How long have you been in Tulsa?
Almost 2 years. I moved here
Almost
with
2 years.
the remote program out in, I want to say, it was the day after I got married, so August 8th.
Wow, August 8th, 2
Yeah.
years ago. Wow.
Well, so August 8th, I guess, almost a year and a half. That's what it is.
Yeah, a year and a half. Well, you're doing well. You are involved in primarily in technology
Yeah.
and developing software and developing program and apps and all of that thing.
Yeah.
And you've been doing that for a while, haven't you?
Yeah, almost 8 years.
14, I think, when you started developing
Yeah.
your first app.
Yeah.
And how did you get started in that? What kind of training did you have? Did you go to I know you were homeschooled. Okay.
Yeah.
I know you were homeschooled. And so how did you get started programming?
Yeah, so I think I started as a programmer and I stopped being a programmer like a few months after I started, right?
Okay. Now, why did you do that? Did it make you crazy like it does me?
I didn't get it. I didn't have the brain for it, you know? So I started, back when I was 14. I didn't have any real training besides the grit, I'd say, or like the knowledge that I could do something that was really like drilled into me by my dad.
Yeah.
So I just kind of had an idea and started thinking through all the different ways I could execute it. And, one of those ways was building relationships and like really starting to figure out, okay, who do I get around me to do all these things, all these big ideas. That led me down a lot of interesting paths, but
you actually built a pretty good team and they were primarily teenagers, right?
No,
Not
I was
really?
the youngest person on. I think even still to this day, I'm the youngest person on every team that I'm on. But I think the youngest person besides me was 25 at the time.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
And so you started this company.
Yeah.
Several years ago. You were still living in Massachusetts at that time, weren't you?
Yeah. I just graduated high school and I had nothing to do, and too young to get a job, and not really wanting to get a job.
So you were too young to get a job, so you just started your own company.
Kinda, yeah. So, well, I guess that wasn't the motivation. The motivation was to initially, actually, it started because it was during the time that Facebook and Instagram, like all of those different social networking platforms, were cracking down on persecution. That was like a really big thing, specifically towards Christians. And so my dad, being in ministry, was like, oh my gosh, this is such a bad problem. I can't post things that are happening in real life, in real time, to Christians.
Right.
And so it kind of started out of that, and then it morphed into a whole, bunch of different things until we landed on what got us funding.
Right.
But yeah.
And that was called Plato.
Yeah.
It was Plaeto. Is that?
Sir.
I remember it. Yeah. And your goal was to develop a social media thing that was really, really allowed people to communicate without being censored and shut down. Is that?
Well, at least so our vision was to create a space for real talk and authentic connection.
Uh-huh.
Whatever that meant at that point.
Yeah.
And the way that we were like envisioning building that was through the medium of the metaverse.
Right.
So, at that point, the term metaverse didn't exist, and so it was just virtual space where people were able to digitally consume content and meet one another.
Yeah.
And the other portion of it was like a full social media product that was reminiscent of like Instagram or Twitter or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of had both. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was really excited about that because even though I use YouTube and Facebook and everything, I
Yeah.
use it as now a major part of my ministry. I find it also one of the most disappointing places that you
Yeah.
can possibly be, because while it has allowed people to connect and given them a platform to express themselves, it's also revealed a lot about human nature.
Yeah.
That's not very pretty.
Yeah.
All the
Yeah.
time
And most things like this too.
I see the meanness that's in a lot of people on social media, and and quite honestly, the vulgarity.
Yeah.
It is, and then of course, if you do try, I've gotten a number of notes from Facebook telling me that I'm pressing up against their, what is it they call it, their community standards or whatever. And but of
Yeah.
course, I do that from the pulpit, so it's nothing new to me. I've always been kind of a troublemaker in that area. But
Yeah.
I mean, we live stream our church service on Facebook and YouTube, and I live stream on Facebook and YouTube. And now I'm on a new platform called D Live TV. I'm not sure if there's anybody watching it on it or not, but experimenting. But my goal is
Yeah.
to bring something that is positive and that is spiritual and that is encouraging. And there's really not much else out there that has the reach,
Yeah.
So it's a two-edged sword. But Plato kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a way to put it.
Tell us a little
That's a way
bit
to put
about
it.
that. Just might as well just tell it all now. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, one of our biggest goals at the point that we actually, started ramping up, I was 16. And, we had built the first version of our product. It was an MVP. We had a lot of great mentors, a lot of great people who were kind of in our circle helping us build it up. And I think end of 2020, end of 2020, yeah, we got our first check, which was $25,000 from an angel investor. And that was like the moment everything became real, and we realized, oh my gosh, this is like, something that we can actually do something with. And from then on, it became, my job was primarily fundraising.
Right.
And I was very much used to that because of how I grew up.
Right.
And in the nonprofit space. And so just applying a lot of that knowledge to how we raised our first few checks. And that eventually led us to partnering with a group that was kind of boosted by a lot of politics. And I mean that in the truest sense, like people who were getting kicked off of different social networking platforms.
Because of their politics? Yeah.
Yes. And wanted to invest in products that they could control.
Yeah.
And so without naming names, we got involved with a lot of different people. And it was a struggle to keep up and kind of learn. And the people that were, what we saw as founders and as executives were dollar signs. I mean, like, as young people doing what we were doing, that was like the most important thing. Getting money into the business, you can grow it. And so, yeah, we jumped at it, gave away too much power, kept little values, and jumped into 2021 with a real, vision to create something that nobody really knew. Like, we didn't really know what we were building at that time. It had gone from a dream to an idea, or to a product, like an MVP, and then now we're building like an actual funded product with 30 team members around the world that were depending on this product for a lot of different things, including myself. And so, yeah, no, that was kind of what catalyzed it falling apart, is not understanding exactly what partnerships are good to walk into, not taking advice. And then, throughout the process, figuring out when to leave, like when to cut and run. That's kind of the I think, ultimately it can be brought down to just bad partnerships and bad decisions, So yeah, that was Plato.
And you were pretty young, so I guess you learned some hard lessons before a lot of people do, because you found yourself in the middle. Do you think it just was too big for you?
I don't know if it was too big for me. I think I didn't understand how to manage the kinds of emotional archetypes that we had involved. There were a lot of different people with no experience running a startup like ours, that we had given the keys to the kingdom. And I mean that, I wouldn't say it was too big as much as it was just, I didn't know what I was doing when it came to the relationship and human part of all the different personalities that come into business. So
So you learned a little bit. So you didn't have a failure, you had a learning experience.
That's what they call them.
Hey, you got to call them that, because you can't build anything on failures. It's a learning experience, and it's part of the process. It's part of the process. I know over the years, when I've had people come to work for me, like in summer camp, when I used to run summer camps all summer long, and we would have young people coming out of college for summer projects and things. And I ran a little bit different camp than they were trained for. And it really, I would have kids come to me and say, look, I'm not up to this. I did this. I lost my cool. I yelled at a kid. I failed. And helping kids to work through that, and to say, we all fail. All of us. And the children that you're working with are very, very familiar with failure. What they're not familiar with is, how do people properly respond to failure? So how did you respond to it? Now, I know you got an invitation to go out to Tulsa. What was that about? How did you get hooked up? There's some group that you got hooked up with in Tulsa that apparently has been pretty good for you.
Well, so, the response was actually a little bit wild in the beginning. I had never dealt with anxiety. I had never dealt with any kind of mental or emotional distress at the level that I did when everything kind of came crashing down. At that point, I was 17, and I was I had met the love of my life. We were planning on getting married. All of my vision, dreams, anything you could possibly think of was wrapped up in this product. And so, in this business. And so when that kind of fell apart, realizing oh my gosh, this is who I am, I'm falling apart, was the initial reaction, right? It was this is kind of, all crumbling, and I'm part of that. And so I immediately was okay, how do I get all this taken care of from a financial perspective? There were so many different things that went into that. And then it was, how do I put myself back in a financial, a good financial place? And there were a lot of different ways that, I think I went through a real humbling process of you don't know everything you've done. I think for somebody that young to get that much pressure kind of makes somebody feel they're everything and they know everything and they've been entrusted with everything.
And at this point, you're 17.
Yes.
Okay.
So I felt like I knew everything, and essentially what happened was, just trying to get myself back into a financially good spot. I went back to Dick's Sporting Goods, my first job, and immediately was how do I, get out of this? Went from that to going door to door selling Verizon internet, and that was a freaking trip.
You
But
sound
it
like
literally,
me.
I
I've
mean,
done everything in the world just trying to stay alive.
yeah,
Yep.
I mean, it was insane, literally. So, I mean, I've written about this a little bit, but the Tampa, you know, I would spend hours in my car.
Yeah. And you were in Tampa at this
you know,
point, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, I had come to Tampa in thinking like, you know, this is the place where my dreams are going to come alive. This is everything.
Well, they did.
And
That's
when
where you
those
met
things
your wife,
faded,
isn't it?
yeah. But when that all faded, it all became kind of depressing. Like the palm trees, the ocean, like everything just became kind of like hopeless. And so, you know, learning how to overcome that was part of the reaction. But also, you know.
Uh-oh, I've lost Kimmy. Did you go away, buddy? This has been a technological nightmare tonight. We're going to wait a minute. There he is. You're back. I lost you for a second.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. All right.
Yeah, no,
so the palm trees were depressing. Pick us up from there.
Yes. So the palm tree, everything was depressing about where I was. And so kind of realized, like, figuring out how to get over that and, you know, while also trying to get financially back on my feet was insane. But I did. I ultimately got a good remote job out in Birmingham. I was helping run special projects for an IT firm that kind of went back to my roots just as far as what I knew how to do.
Right.
And that kind of is what brought me to Tulsa. So I had one of my best friends growing up, Lawrence McAlpine, moved out here probably early 2020 or early 2021, moved out here and loved it. We had a couple company retreats out here. He at the time was our chief operating officer for Plato. And so I was out here a lot. And he moved here with Tulsa Remote, which is the remote program that they run out here. And it just essentially is about economically revitalizing Tulsa and bringing in talent, bringing in resources, like all the things to kind of stimulate the economy. And so I applied, and I had talked to my girlfriend, my fiance at that point. I was 18 when this all went down. So yeah, aged a year. And she was like, I'm not moving to Tulsa. Because you go from Tampa to that. You don't know Tulsa. All you know is like, tumbleweeds and
flat. It's flat.
The Midwest. Yeah. So it took like a lot of prayer and a lot of like, just trying to figure out if it was the right decision. And ultimately we applied, and the decision came to like, if we get accepted, we'll go. If not, we'll stay and figure it out. And we did get accepted. And so we moved out here right after we got married. We initially drove everything up in June, got married, but kind of like backtracking a little bit too is like my business reaction was, let me just start something else. And so in the middle of like getting myself together, I was also like, how do I get my business back together? Because I owned a lot of the IP, I owned a lot of the idea. Like I figured, maybe I could just piece it all together in my own way and go from there. And so that's kind of where Pangea was born. And it transitioned from that to understanding all the research that we had done in Plato and realizing that connecting people through the metaverse was not the best idea. Nobody really wanted to do that at the time. Still it's a little bit early, but we're getting there. The real problem was that young adults between the ages of 16 and 22 could not make friends. And we were trying to figure out why and how. And so Pangea moved from that to, trying to figure out the in-person problem. After I got married, got a little more intentional with it. And we kind of transitioned into helping community managers build awesome communities. So that was kind of all over the map, but
let me stop you for a second. Pangea is your new company.
Yes.
All right. Plato is gone.
Yep.
All right. It's gone. It's not happening anywhere.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
We
at least it's not happening with you. Yeah.
It's not happening with me.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So now your new company is Pangea. It still has to do in at least in theory, with social media, with social connections.
Yeah, so we're actually calling it social living software because a
All
lot
right.
of it has to do with doing life together
Mm-hmm.
in person. And so we kind of remove a lot of the media and replace it with life.
Yeah. You
So
said
yeah,
doing life together, right?
yeah,
I want to share with you that on the wall, I'm on the board of directors for our local crisis pregnancy resource center. And
nice.
as you walk down the hall toward the reception area, on the wall behind the receptionist desk, it says, "We do life together."
Yeah,
That's the motto of the center.
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. So we do
Amazing.
life together. And how does this work? Explain it so that us non-technical people can
Yeah,
imagine it.
yeah. So essentially, one of the biggest problems that we're solving is that 80% of the internet is involved in online communities. So you're in a Facebook group, you're probably in a couple other groups on different platforms. There's Discord,
Mhm.
Instagram, so many different places to actually find community.
Mhm.
The problem with those communities is that 70% of them die after the first year. They, I mean, you probably have been there where people just stop responding. Life happens to people. Things just, don't work and the community dies.
Yep.
And that happens to 70% of online communities. That's a huge disparity. So many people being involved, 80% of the internet, that's an insane number. It's in the billions, to people's places of community. One of the most important pieces of being human, dying. And
Uh-huh.
so that's kind of where we focus on addressing that. And so one of the biggest problems that we find is that, or I guess what Pangea does to address that is we provide human data to community managers, and that human data may be personality data, location data, emotional intelligence data, almost 43 different points of data that we provide to the community manager to actually figure out how to increase engagement and retention over time and create a really great space for humans to have members to have great online and offline opportunities to connect. And so we do that through providing the data and the platform, the actual
Mhm.
medium to
Yeah.
facilitate community.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, yeah,
So what kinds of groups? I guess let me phrase this right. What kinds of people or groupings are going to be attracted
yeah,
and benefit from something like Pangea?
yeah,
Give us an example.
yeah.
Yeah, just
So
give me an example.
for our ICP, which is our ideal customer profile, they are, I guess, a lot of what our customers are right now are social event creators, people who are trying to create events in person, and they want to add the community aspect so that those momentary events kind of
Hmm.
translate into long-term relationships.
Hmm.
And some of the best ways to do that right now, at least in the 21st century, is online.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we focus right now. We also have a lot of great customers that are coming up in the university space. Helping RAs actually build engagement and retention within dorms, and then also kind of helping new students onboard into the university life.
Right. Hmm.
We're looking at churches as well, so our product actually is extremely powerful for churches. We
Hmm.
human match, so we take a lot of different data points and we match people together based on a ton of different factors, and that seems to be very helpful for small groups. So
Hmm.
creating Bible studies, creating groups of people who get together and say like a large church, such as Church on the Move, um, you know, where people sometimes don't really get connected, and you can kind of just like leave without being seen or heard from.
One of the biggest problems that I've seen over the years, particularly with the megachurch movement, is you can be in the midst of this huge group of people and be absolutely invisible.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and
and
that's
I
a point
think
of a lot of trauma for a lot of people.
yeah, and I
Um,
think it's why a lot of people don't put down roots,
yeah, yeah,
because I never was able to connect with anybody.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
that's interesting. You mentioned university dorm groups. churches. I think when we talked earlier this week, you mentioned like medical groups or hospitals or something like
Yeah.
that. Some.
Yeah, so we kind of fit really well into the addiction space. This is something that we
Mhm.
found out pretty recently, actually. But people trying to get a hold of their lives,
Mhm.
in after recovering from really serious addiction. And so a lot of the ways that those different organizations facilitate that growth is through groups, anger management groups,
Right.
AA. There's so many different groups that exist to facilitate that, facilitate that growth. And so we can kind of plug in and sit at the intersection of, the human and the organization and the recovery.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of what we've been exploring recently as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd love to. I'd love to just see sometime,
Yeah.
an example of how that works. I mean, it sounds like. I'm thinking about the whole addiction thing. We deal with,
Yeah.
our church, and the community we live in, and
Yeah.
so addiction is a thing that we deal with on an ongoing basis. Matter of fact, we had our food pantry tonight, and a lot of the people that come through our doors on Thursday night, which
Yeah.
is upwards of 170, well, representing upwards of 175 people every Thursday night. Many
Wow.
of those people are, well, it's about 65 to 70, 75 families
Yeah.
that are represented. And some of them, have more than, it's, so we figure it's somewhere. Robin's online here. She could probably give me an idea of what it is, but it's over 150
Wow.
individuals, and many of those are impacted by addictions of some port,
Yeah.
some type, and many of them are involved in recovery programs and stuff, and many of them are not. Robin says about 175 a week,
Yeah.
and many of them are not, and we see people lose the battle.
Yep.
And I think and we see so many people who just are cut off. Their addiction has cut them off from family. It's cut them off from meaningful connections. And I'm
Yeah.
letting it go around in my mind how that would work to help us as a
Yeah.
church help people who are involved in those kind of addictive behaviors and everything.
Yeah.
Uh, that's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Well, we're open as ever to help figure that out.
Yeah.
And there's so many different ways to do that, and we've
Mhm.
been like in the exploratory phase of that, and it's like a fire hose because there's so many different human problems.
Yeah.
And we're lucky because we kind of tapped into that really important human data point of emotional intelligence. Like,
Mhm.
where are people at?
All right, so let me just ask you another technical question that I know you
Yeah.
keep talking about human data points.
Yeah.
All right, A, what is that? And two,
Yeah.
B, how do you measure that?
Yeah. So everyone
I
has.
mean, that to me, that's just like that's scientific gobbledygook to me.
Well,
So,
that's the important part. It has to be if it's going to be impactful.
right.
So basically, there's a couple different data points that we look at. There's the very basic, like meta level, or I guess
Uh-huh.
not meta level, but before you get to meta level, you have, where is this person located? What is this person interested in? What is their career? Do they have kids? Like, just the basic human information. And then we dive a little deeper and get to a meta level where we start
Mhm.
talking about the things that are unique to the human. So their personality type. There's many different types of human, and they are classified in a couple different structures, like MBTI, which is the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator,
Right.
and then the Enneagram. There's a couple other that are kind of popping up and popping down, but the most trusted so far, is MBTI and Enneagram. And so we look at those data points, and those tell us so many different things. They tell us like the introversion, the extroversion levels, how open is this person to new things, what do they value, and kind of what is their communication style. There's so many things that we can pull from that. And then we dive deeper than any other company on the planet right now, any product on the planet right now. We look at emotional intelligence. We've actually tech-enabled that for the first time, where we've taken the emotional intelligence data point, which is It tells us a lot of different things that go deeper than, things that are fixed, like personality, things that, don't really change much over time. It gives us insight into the growing part of the mind, what people are motivated by, what demotivates them, kind of what their overall vision in life is, how high they think we can go. And so we take that data, compiled with all the other information that we, have talked about, and create a profile and say, okay, you're a community manager, you're an event host, and you want to put together a really impactful event. We give you that data point. It presents itself in a percentage point. It compares itself against 5 other people in the group who are also going to this event or wanting to be added to a channel where they can talk deeper. And it allows the host or manager to actually curate an event that meets that person where they're at. We recommend activities. We actually utilize artificial intelligence to do a lot of this, where, we're able to tell the activities that this person would want to do, the life story that they have, the questions that can be asked to kind of be the icebreaker for that person, when they're trying to connect with others. And so we provide all that data, we provide all the information. And, as far as the engagement piece goes on the platform, we constantly, we tap into what the human responds to so that the community doesn't die and that there's constantly activity and action and growth. So that's kind of the technical piece, as far as what we mean by human data and how we apply it. But yeah, it's been quite the journey of figuring that out.
Yeah. Now I'm going to really throw you a curveball.
Okay.
Because I'm going to describe for you an event.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to tell me what your response to it is in terms of what you do. All right.
Yeah.
We very quickly, I'll give you the history. We had an event here in Brattleboro a year ago. Well, not quite a year ago, but last May, in which we brought in a fellow who is his gift, his spiritual gift, is evangelism. He's an evangelist. High-powered evangelist. He travels all over the world. He was in Sri Lanka recently. He's been in Canada for months and months of meetings. He is, if you go into the biblical, the fivefold ministry, I know you've heard of that. He's the evangelist. That's what his gifting is.
Wow.
And he travels all over the world, and he preaches. He holds meetings like, revival meetings, evangelism meetings. But what he does that is remarkable, and he's from Florida. He's from Fort Lauderdale. All right. What is remarkable about him is that he teaches people to do evangelism. He teaches people to do personal evangelism. We had meetings at night. In the morning, he had a workshop at our church, and he brought a team of, 8 or 10 people with him. And in the afternoons, they split up the volunteers who came, about 45 people from our church and another church, and they split them up, and they actually took them out on the streets and taught them to do street evangelism very effectively.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, we saw in 5 days in our little town with about 40 people, we saw over 300 people respond to the gospel in 5 days.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Now, fast forward to next July.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we are going to be holding an event. We're doing an event in May, first week in May, where we're trying to build a coalition of churches throughout the state of Vermont to mobilize evangelists, to train and to mobilize people in every corner of the state of Vermont, because Vermont is the least evangelized state of the 50 states in the United States. Fewer people, and we're kind of tied with New Hampshire, but close together. Fewer people attend church or profess to be a Christian in the state of Vermont than anywhere else in the United States. All right. So we've got a huge challenge. Yeah. So in the first week in July, actually the week of the 4th of July, we're doing what's called the Great American Camp Meeting. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be setting up a tent at our camp up in White River. I don't know if your dad ever brought you up there or not.
Yes, yeah, I've been there.
The old camp,
twice.
Remember that?
Yeah.
We're going to be setting up a 500-seat tent, and we're going to be pulling people from every geographical part of the state of Vermont.
Wow.
And we're going to be doing an old-fashioned tent meeting, but that's going to be at night, with singing and special music and
Yep.
preaching and praying for people and everything. But during the day, we're going to be training people to do personal evangelism and actually taking them out on the streets in Western New Hampshire, Lebanon, and West Lebanon, and White River and the surrounding area, and actually doing evangelism. And the goal is, and our Tommy, our evangelist, his goal is when he leaves a place, what he brought with him doesn't leave with him; it stays.
Yeah.
He's been very, very successful at building coalitions and building this community of evangelists that continue to do the work that he's trained them to do. And one of the problems we had, and this is monumental, and it's why I'm trying to raise most of the people that we reached in that week last year are it's interesting, they're homeless, they're addicted, they don't have community connections, but one of the things almost all of them have these days is a telephone.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
And Wi-Fi is everywhere. And so what I'm challenging you, help me imagine how Pangea can help us during this event, setting up for this event, motivating people to be involved in this event, and then keeping this community together after this event closes on the 6th of July, 2024.
Yeah, so that's definitely not a curveball. That's actually directly what we do. But we do it for different events. So at the end of the day, most events are similar as far as the actual logistical function of getting the people interested, getting them there, and then keeping them interested after after the event. So the way that we would kind of plug in there is there's a couple different ways. First, you're talking about evangelists, getting them together, training them, building a community of them. And so we can help with that first part, just from a beginning standpoint, getting them together, prompting them with our share or ask, truth or dare questions that are auto-generated based on the description, chat data, all that stuff, and get them to really engage with one another, and that can make trainings really powerful. Getting the people there is something that we only really handle from a ticketing perspective.
Yeah.
So you're able to create the tickets, get the global event link, put it out on the internet, get people to sign up for a ticket, be able to track who's going, get those people into the community. So once you have these evangelists going out, they're like, hey, we're having this tent meeting. We'd love if you could come out. Here's the ticket link. They buy a ticket and they get prompted to join the community. So they can buy a ticket without actually having to join a community, but the option is there. Once they've joined the community, they're also given the same prompt. So they're truth or dare, share or ask questions that are engaging to get people to respond either in video, text, pull a life story out. Usually we typically do this a week and a half before the event because there's a lot of different formation metrics that go into community management creation and long-term growth. So if you get people to engage a week and a half before an event, that's just short and long enough of a time to keep them interested. So a lot of different factors go into that. But once the event actually happens, you have all these people who are already in an event. You can choose to match them in groups. Choose where they're sitting, actually print out icebreaker questions for them based on their personality types and chat data and all kinds of stuff. You can put them on chairs, wherever else. You can actually prompt them from the stage, whatever that might be. And then after the event, you would have that community, right? And so the community would kind of transition from, I'm kind of interested in God. I want to learn a little bit more. I have this community of people who I've kind of gotten to know over the last week and a half. I've gone to this really cool event. Now I want to take my relationship to another level, and I need a community to kind of surround me to do that. And so we would kind of empower your community manager, whoever they are, to kind of make that happen with low effort. So all the prompts are there. You're able to take those groups of people who really connected, put them in their own channels, that have their own specific prompts. And then you can take those channels and curate specific events for them over time. Like, if you're wanting to do like just a basic group for them where they meet in a specific place, weekly, monthly, whatever that might be, you can create an event specifically for them. So that's kind of how we would do that.
Okay. So, well, all right. Woo. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be talking to our team about this. And so what I'm imagining is it in a very short order, as Tommy travels and holds all of these meetings, you could begin to develop something that's literally global.
Yep. And also niche. So you have, one of our customers that were actually potential customers that we're selling right now has a 30,000 person community. They're mainly focused on venture capital, right? The thing is, they're a global community, and they have 30,000 members and only 8 posts a week. That is like an incredible discrepancy. And so kind of what we look at is why. And so you have like a global community of however many thousands of people, however many hundreds of people. And one of the main reasons is because people don't want to engage with that many people because it's overwhelming. So we take that global, huge number, and we actually find the little data points in the different humans that are actually connecting, and we put them in their own groups that they just have those to focus on. So it could be global. It could be global with a lot of like personal implications.
All right. So what I'm going to do is the next time that Tommy Zito is anywhere near you, or maybe I'll just try to connect you online, at least for an introduction. This one of the things that is so key, of course, with evangelism is follow-up.
Yep.
It is follow-up, and we found, of course, given our, we were not shocked that follow-up was a real problem, given the people, the demographic that we're reaching. Brattleboro's in a very difficult place right now, very difficult place, and the community is essentially dying.
Wow.
And we have an amazing an amazingly scary drug and homeless situation.
Oh, so like literally dying.
Literally dying.
That's crazy. Wow.
As a community and individuals, it's we're facing, and given the fact that Vermont is very hostile toward Christianity, very hostile toward Christianity, we're working in a really tough area. But Vermont, typically, all of the state is in that kind of a condition. So what Brian, for those of you who don't know, I think you all know Brian is my oldest son and my partner in ministry, is we're trying to build a coalition of churches in the state of Vermont to work together. To say, look, we're not going to do this by ourselves. We need to work together in a partnership. And then we're realizing that there are things happening all over the world that are focused on the same things we're focused on. And I'm listening to you and going, we need to talk more.
Yeah,
we need to talk more, because I think that I don't fully understand how it works, because that's not my area. And Robin just posted that 85% of the people who live in Vermont live at or below the poverty line. 85%.
Wow. Yeah. There's so many different metrics that probably go into that, but that's
okay.
insane.
Well, the metrics are this. Vermont is, all right, let's go. They are very antagonistic toward organized religion, particularly Christianity. Okay. What churches remain in Vermont, there are very, very few that we would call evangelical or Bible preaching churches. There's lots of buildings with church hung on the front, but they're not faithful to the word of God. They are in for social change, all of this stuff. It's a social gospel. It's not the biblical gospel. And so we're fighting an uphill battle. And then you have the poverty. Many people, the young people, are leaving Vermont because they can't get work. And they can't get work. And the only people who are coming to Vermont are here because welfare is easy to get. Social, it's easy to get
Yeah.
free housing. It's easy to get.
Yeah.
They're going to put up a safe place where you can go shoot up, and if you die, they can shoot you with Narcon, so you can go back to shooting up. That's the mentality of the community, and it's impossible for
Wow.
people on the lower income scale. I mean, 85% of the people who live in Vermont are at or below the poverty level. To get a reasonably decent apartment in the town of Brattleboro is at least $1,600, $1,700 a month to
Yeah.
a
Nobody's
guy
getting
who's
that.
living on
Yeah.
food stamps.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
and interestingly enough, the housing that is available uh, is basically under a housing authority, which is
Hmm.
all subsidized housing. So if you come here and you work for a living and you make a good living, you can't find a place to live.
That's really crazy. That's a whole
every
weird. That's a cocktail of problems. That's insane.
like I said, I would throw you a curveball today.
Yeah.
We are facing an incredible metric where people who actually have a good job and make a good living can't stay here because they can't
Yeah.
find a place to live, or it's how the housing cost is right out of the ballpark.
Yeah.
And right now the average house in the state of Vermont is somewhere around $300,000
Oh my gosh.
in a state that 85% of the people who live here are at or below the poverty level.
Well, I believe it. You know, the weird thing about that too is last year, I think 2 years in a row, Vermont was voted the most popular place to move to in America.
Sure, and during COVID, but the people who say that are coming from New York City, and they're coming from Boston,
and they've got their money, they've got their, they can afford. They were
literally at 2 years ago. People were putting their house on Facebook.
Wow.
And selling it, getting a contract the next day, sight unseen, prices out because people were trying to get out of the city.
Yeah.
And they had money, and I don't even want to look at it. My son, both of my boys sold their houses during this time, and they put their house on the market, and within 2 days had a signed contract, both of them for more than they were asking.
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
Well, that was all of 2021.
That's right. The problem is that means, Robin says, my neighbor's house sold in 3 hours, sight unseen. The problem means that these are not people who actually live here.
Yeah.
These are people who are escaping here.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole other dynamic that goes. So what we're dealing with in terms of dealing with evangelism and doing effective follow-up and engaging people is a nightmare that every church that I know of is struggling with.
Yep.
We're all struggling with it. And I would like to see something happen that many churches from one end of Vermont to another could develop a coalition where we're all looking at the same thing from the same direction with the same and a way to collaborate, more effectively.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking at. And it's a real life problem.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think that this would turn into a sales opportunity, but now that it has, we're here for you. I think that's exactly what we're built for. So,
well, I think not tonight on in this format, but I think you and I are going to be talking a lot later, and maybe you and Brian and I will get together.
Definitely.
And maybe I'll wrangle me a speaking engagement or two out in the Tulsa area, and I'll come and see you. But I'm always looking for that anyway.
Yeah.
But this is it's interesting. I wanted to bring you on because I thought because I think you're a very interesting young man. There are not many 20-year-olds who've had the life experience and the acumen for business and technology, having a real because you know what? I'm a techie. I love technology, but most of technology in the United States of America is wasted on pictures of my feet and what I had for supper last night. And it does not have or for giving people a place where they can vent and say mean things to other people and do it in the anonymity of their bedroom.
Yep.
And I think it is, as all things, it is an amazing tool that gets either totally misunderstood or totally misused and used for frivolous, useless kind of things. And now all of a sudden I'm looking at somebody who's saying, look, let me show you how technology can benefit, and I'm not talking about making life easier and having better refrigerators and better phones and
Yeah, I know.
all that stuff, but really interact with people and connect with people, Kimmy, that I believe, I said to you last night, everybody says, well, we're all connected on Facebook. Well, that's a dream. That's a pipe dream.
Yeah.
People are more isolated than they've ever been.
Yep. Well,
They
4
don't-
out of 10 Americans.
don't have
4 out of
real-
10 Americans are lonelier than ever.
They don't have real friends.
That number is
They
growing.
don't have real friends. They only
Yeah.
have people who show up on their video screen.
Yep.
And it's a joke. I heard someone say to me, "Well, I have 3,000 friends." I said, "Yeah, name one." The people who click like or follow, that's not your friend.
Yeah.
I've got a few people who are my friends and everything else, but most of the time, people are not connected. They're disconnected and they're isolated. And I mean, there are guys having affairs with women that they've never met. They do it all online.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so
and the problem's gotten worse because, there's a whole, I mean, we kind of talked about this last night, but there's a whole new generation that is, we are becoming adults and we are entering the workforce and we're, finishing college, and it's like we're actually entering the world. And our only perception, we're the first generation in history to be digital natives, like people who grew up with screens and with readily accessible everything. And so, that kind of is causing a whole different culture of, and that is difficult to tackle because all of the structures that are in place to tackle loneliness, tackle depression, anxiety, all of that is in the context of the past, which unfortunately was only a decade ago, really, where adults weren't so tied to devices, to screens. So, many, but now that, we're growing up, there's so little that is actually accessible and available, which is why I mentioned yesterday, I think the first company to understand emotional intelligence data and actually use that to assist humans is going to be the next unicorn, the next Facebook, the next Instagram, the next actually helpful company for humans. So we'll see where it goes. But
I saw a comedian the other day he's always picking on the millennials. They seem to be his target audience, and he said if you ever seen one of these guys when they lose their phone, and he's like, they don't know what to do. They can't. I'm going to have to learn to talk to people.
I know because I'm that. So
but the reality is this: is you're offering to use technology to actually address some of the issues that technology is largely responsible for.
Yep.
And that's refreshing to me. In other words, we have, and I'm, I admit it. I live on my phone. I do all my business on my phone. I do all my banking on my phone. I do most of my communication. I don't talk to people on the phone anymore. I text them because it's good.
I mean, my screen time is through the roof. I like to say it's because of business, but honestly, all the little things that get into your day, you're on your phone.
Yeah.
With readily accessible everything.
Right. And so what you're saying, if we can start to wind this thing down a little bit, what you're saying is that you have developed a platform that is attempting to address a lot of the issues that, in a technological way, that technology actually created. I guess that's where the cure has to come from in some ways.
Well, I'll steal
somehow we've got to reconnect people.
Yeah, I'll steal meetup.com slogan and say we're using technology to get people off technology, like long term. And that's kind of the goal. There's a lot of different companies that are trying to do it, and some of them are focused on different things, but we think that starting with the community and starting with, I mean, we think Pangea can do so many different things with the data that we're collecting, the data that we're using to actually, help. But right now, I mean, there's tons of different, like meetup.com, IRL. I mean, there's so many amazing companies that are focused on fixing the gap of in-person to online interaction. And I think, the trend is moving that way. So
good. I think that's exciting.
Yeah.
That's because I as we were talking last night, and I look at hey, Kevin Nowicki, my friend from down in North Carolina. Good to join you, Kevin. You have to go back and you have to listen to this whole broadcast. We had a little hiccup at the beginning and went offline, and I didn't notice it, and so we lost a little bit. So we just started again here at this on this Kevin. Kevin works in. You're in what part of North Carolina? Somewhere down on the eastern part. And the name of the church that Kevin is with is called Boomerang Church. I think that's an interesting name for a church.
A nice name.
But Kevin grew up in my summer camp program. So
wow, that's full
I got a lot of kids on here tonight.
You've been having a lot of full circle moments today.
Yeah, I have more than you know. But Kevin, you really Albemarle. That's right. You need to go back and listen to this whole thing because there's Grandpa's in there.
Yeah,
my Grandpa Robert. But listen, this has been fascinating to me. It really has. I just wanted to touch base with you. I wanted people to meet you, but you have really pushed a lot of buttons tonight for me.
I'm glad.
You have addressed. I baptized you, Kevin. I think it was it in the pool up at Camp Wabanong? Wow. Listen, I baptized you, Kevin. I dedicated Kimmy. So, boy, I'm feeling old. I'm really feeling old tonight. But listen, we're going to talk more. We really are. But I think that it's a blessing to see a young man as yourself. You've recognized a lot of the weaknesses of our culture, maybe even the weaknesses of our church, and you're addressing it in a very creative way, in a very thoughtful way, and I believe a way that is going to impact a lot of people. And I want you to know I'm going to be praying for you. I always pray for you. You know that.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time, but I'm going to be praying for you that God will guide you and that He will only allow good counsel to come into your life. I've seen what happens when you get bad counsel. And,
I have too.
But you learned.
Not good.
You learned a lot from it. Okay.
Yeah.
And because there are so many desperate people. Robin has her own video podcast on Wednesday nights, and last night she talked about people who have fallen into the ditch. She used the story of the Good Samaritan and how people have fallen into the ditch. Doesn't matter what the ditch looks like; it's a ditch, and they're lost. And a lot of ministry has left them laying in the ditch. Because it's been I know a number of ministries. I know of one friend, pastor, and his church was all over him. They were saying to him, "You need to preach the gospel message more at church. You need to preach the gospel more." And his response, he got frustrated one day, and he said, "To who?" He said, "There's nobody here that doesn't know Jesus. It's the same people every week who come to this church, and you've all heard the gospel 1,000 times. Why should I preach the gospel here? The people who need to hear the gospel are not here." And using Robin's analogy, they're in a ditch somewhere, and they need somebody to climb, not cross the road and go over on the other side, but to really address where they are. And I think I'm hearing you in a very technical way say we got to climb down in the ditch of all of these people who are frozen to their screen and meaningless activity, but are never really connecting.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
Fascinating, young man. I want to keep up with this. You're going to give me a contact so I can follow you and follow what you're doing, right?
I will.
You at least owe me that.
I will.
You owe me that.
I will.
I apologize that we were kind of had a truncated beginning on this thing because we started and apparently got kicked offline, and I didn't realize it for a few minutes, and so we had to rekindle and start again. But Kimmy Levi, thank you for being on tonight. I think it has been fantastic.
Yeah.
You have given me. I'm not going to sleep tonight. I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to sleep tonight because you've got so much going in my head, and I got some people that I'm going to call and say, "Watch my night, Mike," because you're going to get excited too. And
Cool.
and we'll be in,
really happy to hear that.
We'll be in touch.
Excellent.
And I think I appreciate what you're doing. Keep it up. Keep the good work up. And thanks. I know you're building a business, and I know you're dealing with a lot of corporate level and everything like that. But your approach for the church, I think, is amazing. And I'm just imagining, though I don't understand all of the data points and all of that stuff, I know that you do. And I'm thinking that you may be something new to add to the mission of the church today that we've been missing.
I hope so.
Well, and maybe we can get this generation back.
We'll
maybe
see.
We'll see.
We'll see. There's so many different reasons why I would say we won't, but yeah.
I agree. I agree.
Lord willing.
Conventional wisdom says that we won't, but with God, all things are possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we can just get some, pull a few people out of the ditch. That's okay. This has been Kimmy Levi. I'm Mike Gantt. This is Night Mike. God bless you. Come back and see us sometime. All right. Bye, Kimmy.
Bye.